A nombre de Penguin Random House y el sello Suma de Letras, les damos la más cordial bienvenida y les agradecemos que nos acompañen esta tarde. También agradecemos a nuestra autora, a Shari Lapena. Bueno, Shari es una de las autoras que siempre nos da mucho gusto tener y leer, porque bueno, y justo lo platicábamos con sus lectores y también como editores es refrescante leer a Shari porque siempre tenemos sorpresas y fíjense que ya no es tan fácil sorprender a los editores y ¿qué les digo a ustedes como lectores? Tampoco es fácil sorprender a los lectores de thrillers y Shari lo está haciendo constantemente, entonces le agradecemos mucho siempre sus libros. Shari también es autora de La pareja de al lado, Un invitado inesperado, que es el libro que estamos presentando esta tarde, y Un extraño en casa. Y para presentarla nos acompaña Valentina Traba, y quién mejor que Valentina, que ha sido lectora desde el principio de los libros de Shari y bueno, los domina mejor que cualquiera. Ahorita estábamos teniendo una charla y se acuerda de todos los nombres de los personajes y todos los plots, entonces creo que es la mejor persona para que presente a nuestra autora esta tarde y por favor démosles un gran aplauso.
Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos a esta presentación de Invitado Inesperado. Más que una presentación como tal, yo quisiera hacer una plática con Shari porque sé que hay muchas cosas que quieren saber sobre sus thrillers, sobre los libros que escribe. Y muchas gracias también a Penguin por la invitación. Y yo quisiera comenzar esta presentación hablando un poco sobre el tema de los thrillers y por qué Un invitado inesperado es una novela que reúne todas esas características de una buena novela policíaca, porque los que estamos aquí buscamos siempre como esos elementos indispensables dentro de la novela para que nos mantengan enganchados todo el tiempo. Una de las cosas que yo disfruté enormemente de este libro es que encontré precisamente todos esos ingredientes perfectamente enumerados y detallados, y una de esas cosas que me encantaba era encontrar un ambiente como el que nosotros nos imaginamos en una novela policíaca, un ambiente cerrado, oscuro, que nos pone como lectores en una situación de estrés, porque estamos constantemente buscando una salida y pocas veces se logra dentro de la historia. Estos personajes están encapsulados, por así decirlo, en un espacio que es un pequeño hotelito en las montañas, donde está nevando, donde se va la luz y empiezan a ocurrir cosas raras con los mismos huéspedes que van llegando. Y justamente cuando hablo de los huéspedes, brincando ya al siguiente elemento, es que me encuentro también con personajes que en algún momento se vuelven culpables todos. Todos son posibles víctimas o todos son posibles culpables. Y esa es otra de las características de una novela policíaca y de una novela policíaca que nosotros los lectores disfrutamos, porque nos permite hacer diferentes teorías y cada uno va pensando qué personaje podría ser. Y en este caso, una de las cosas que me encantaron también de la historia es precisamente la psicología de esos personajes. Encontrarnos con personas aparentemente normales que tienen un pasado que los hace posibles víctimas y posibles culpables, y encontrar en el argumento esas características me parece formidable, porque yo como lectora iba teniendo dudas de cada uno de estos y resulta ser, como siempre suele ser con los libros de Shari, que quien es el culpable es quien menos espera. Entonces, me parece maravilloso y justamente traigo varias preguntas al respecto para conocer parte de este proceso, y obviamente al final también tendremos las preguntas abiertas para ustedes por si tienen duda con respecto a este libro o alguna de sus otras novelas. Y yo quisiera comenzar preguntando, antes de la pregunta. Este libro tiene un guiño muy claro a una de las escritoras por excelencia de novela policíaca, que es Agatha Christie. Entonces me queda clarísimo, Shari, que leíste a Agatha Christie, pero yo quisiera saber qué libro leíste de Agatha Christie independientemente del que está relacionado directamente con este libro, que es 10 negritos. Le están traduciendo, tengan paciencia.
I'm a big fan of Agatha Christie, and I read all of her books when I was growing up. And one of my favorite books was her And Then There Were None, where everyone's trapped on the isolated island, and the people start to get murdered, and they're all trapped, and they're all worried about who's going to be killed next, and they're trying to find out who did it. And I wanted to take that idea, and I wanted to sort of update it for a more modern sensibility. So I took my characters and I isolated them in a small hotel in an ice storm where they couldn't get away and they had no communications, and the same situation where they start to die, and we know that someone's a murderer among them, and we don't know who's going to get killed next. So the characters and the reader are all wondering at the same time who's going to be next and trying to figure out who among them is the killer. And I focused on more of the dark psychological underpinnings of the characters than in the Christie book. So everyone in the story has a backstory. They have a secret, they have lies they've told. So you find yourself as you read it trying to determine who might be bad enough to actually be the killer. And so that's sort of the setup of it.
Ya tenemos como que ese contexto de los personajes, pero los personajes que se presentan en este caso son personajes muy reales. Hay un periodista, bueno, hay unos periodistas, hay un abogado, hay parejas que por diferentes motivos llegan a este hotel en el que aparentemente van a pasar un fin de semana idílico y, oh sorpresa, es lo que menos sucede dentro de la historia, al contrario. Pero lo que me gusta de estos personajes es esa parte tan humana que tienen, que todos como lectores tenemos, y que muchas veces son esas cosas que nos sucedieron las que nos hacen capaces de hacer otras cosas de las que no nos creemos capaces. Entonces, estos personajes, ¿tú ya los tienes desde un principio en tu mente o van surgiendo conforme vas escribiendo? Porque me llama mucho la atención eso, la realidad de cada uno de estos personajes, lo humanos que pueden ser, lo comunes, ¿sabes? Que no lo pueden ser nuestros vecinos, nuestros amigos. Esa es, sobre eso va la pregunta. ¿Cómo decidiste que fueran estos personajes? ¿Fueron a tu mente o ya los tenías desde que estabas en el proceso de escritura?
No, I actually don't try and develop my characters before I develop the story. So what I do is I start with an interesting situation, and I'll have a character or two and the beginning of a story, and then I just start to write it. And then as I go along, I learn more about the characters as the story affects the characters and the characters affect the story. So I don't create a list of characteristics for my characters or a backstory. What I do to find out about my characters is I put them in a very difficult situation, and then I see how they react. And that's how I find out, are they really bad or just a little bit bad? I find out what motivates them. And then sometimes I don't really figure out their backstory until quite far along in the story. I learn about them as I see what they do.
Eso querría decir que los plot twists o los giros dentro de la historia también van surgiendo conforme vas escribiendo.
That is right. I mean, when I'm writing, the twists sort of come organically as the plot develops. So it's all quite organic. The characters develop and tell me things, and then something will happen and make the character do something, and then the character will do something to make the plot advance. And it's all very entwined and not planned out at all.
Imagínense, cuando pensamos siempre en historias de este tipo, de este género, nos imaginamos que el autor tiene que ser sumamente rígido, ¿no? Y tener ya como que desde un principio todo muy estructurado. Y algo que nos comentaba Shari hace unos minutos era precisamente eso, que ella, conforme va escribiendo, se van desarrollando tanto personajes como los plot twists o los giros dentro de la historia. Y justamente era algo también que le decíamos que admirábamos mucho, porque como lectores vamos descubriendo también a esos personajes a lo largo de la historia. Nunca nos imaginamos que el plot twist que vaya a surgir surja, y más porque ella también lo va desarrollando conforme se va escribiendo, y es algo que admiro enormemente del trabajo de Shari, me parece increíble. Tengo otra pregunta por aquí que dice que te había yo escrito, que es ¿qué fue lo más difícil de escribir este libro? Porque si todo va surgiendo conforme vas avanzando, ¿qué es lo que más se te dificulta? Tiene que haber algo.
The hardest thing about this book was the plot.
Justamente es que
So I make it up as I go along, and it took me a while to come up with a group of characters that I thought interacted well with each other at the beginning of the story, but I didn't really know who was going to die or who was going to do it. And then when I got about halfway through, I realized I'd got myself into a bit of a corner, and I had to change who was going to die and how in order to move on. I couldn't figure out where to go from the original couple that I killed, so I had to go back and start over and change the first murder. And then I thought, okay, now I can move forward. So I had to do that twice in that book, and I've never had to do that in a book before, where I stop, go back, and rework where I'm going. Normally I just go A to B to Z, and I go right through. But this was a complicated story for me.
Ok. En este tipo de novelas son las características que ya les digo, son el argumento, son los personajes, son las situaciones, es la psicología de los personajes, y también este guiño muy particular que hay en un invitado inesperado con respecto a Agatha Christie, que para mí fue como darme cuenta del homenaje que hace también Shari a esta escritora de novela policíaca, porque hay guiños a lo largo de toda la historia de un invitado inesperado, hay guiños sobre 10 negritos particularmente. ¿Lo tenías ya así, muy pensado desde un principio?
Yeah. I did deliberately put an Agatha Christie novel on a side table in the hotel, just as a little hint. That was fun for me to do.
Sabemos,
But I have to
Dime.
add, when I did that, I picked a particular novel to put on the nightstand because I thought the plot was going to develop in a similar way to that book, but it didn't, so I changed the book on the nightstand.
y también por ahí aparece una mención de un personaje muy importante de Agatha Christie, que justamente eso también me llama la atención, porque siempre en las novelas policíacas hay un personaje que es el encargado de investigar lo que está pasando dentro de las novelas. Hay un personaje que desarrolla el papel como de investigador, y si bien en este caso no es un detective o no es un policía, sí hay un personaje que tiene como la batuta de la historia y que va intentando darle solución a los problemas. ¿Siempre fue el personaje de David para ti? Ese personaje que iba a tener, no el control, pero sí la voz más fuerte dentro de los personajes.
Yeah, so I planned this one that there wouldn't be a police investigation until the end. So it starts out, I think you mean the lawyer, David, who obviously he's a criminal lawyer. He's familiar with crime scenes. He's the one who at the very beginning, when the first victim falls down the stairs, he thinks something looks suspicious about that. He doesn't think it's just an accident. And it's not until the second body drops that everyone else starts to realize that he was right. So he's the initial investigator of what's going on. But once the second person dies, all the other characters start to investigate also. They don't have his ability, but they have their suspicions and they're thinking all the time and coming up with theories, just as the reader is coming up with theories. And they are also forming little allegiances with people they trust and people they don't trust, keeping them away. And they're also tearing at one another, trying to find out their weak spots, trying to find out their secrets. And there's one scene very late at night when they're all sitting around the fire, and it's almost like confession time. And everyone's telling their deepest, darkest secrets because everybody knows they've got one. And that's a very pivotal moment for me, I think, in the book, because it's sort of, they're all peeling back the layers and getting at the truth of each of the characters and realizing that everybody has something to hide. And yeah, it's quite creepy.
Sí, al todos tener algo que esconder, todos tienen un pasado que confesar y todos son posibles culpables, y entre ellos hay una situación, justamente como dice Shari, donde llega el momento de la confesión y uno como lector va sacando o intentando sacar la conclusión de qué es realmente lo que pasa. Lo que sí les puedo decir es que el final de ese libro es como los finales que tiene Shari en sus libros. Nos deja con el ojo cuadrado. Y justo cuando creías que ya habías llegado al meollo del asunto y tú como lector experto de novelas policíacas ya tienes al posible culpable, no sucede. Vuelve a cambiar. Hay otro plot twist en las últimas páginas, sobre todo en las últimas páginas, en el último renglón de la historia. ¿Siempre buscas tener ese tipo de finales? ¿Te gustan más los finales abiertos o cerrados?
Well, I think I prefer open endings. I like to have some closure. We like to know who did it, but we don't necessarily always know if they get away with doing it. So, you want to know, but you don't know all of it. You don't know if they get away with it. So it's a bit of a trademark, I think, for me, the open ending, which is why I get so many requests for sequels.
Justamente eso te iba a preguntar. Obviamente, al tener un final abierto, te da la posibilidad de una posible continuación de esta historia. ¿Lo has pensado con este libro?
I have thought about it. For this book, there's an opportunity to carry on, because I'm quite interested in David, the lawyer, and is it Gwen? They're having a relationship. I'm already 2 books past this one, so I have to remember who my characters are. But they've got a romantic relationship going on, but his dark secret is he may or may not have murdered his wife in the kitchen with a knife. I think a knife, yes. And so the question is, did he do it? There was some question about whether there was some time missing between when he found his dead wife and when he called the police. So I left that. That's a book I would kind of like to write, because I would like to know if David did in fact kill his wife, and how is Gwen going to react to that if they end up being a couple. So that's an interesting possibility. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I tend to, just want to start over. When I finished a book, I've had enough, and I want a fresh slate.
Es que creo que también sería interesante conocer la historia de cada uno de los personajes que hay dentro de la historia. Cada uno tiene una historia tan interesante, sobre todo por el tema, son unas amigas, un abogado, una periodista, el tema de las parejas también ahí dentro de la historia, que son parejas que llegan precisamente a este lugar, como les digo, intentando encontrar un momento idílico, pacífico. Y conforme vamos leyendo, nos vamos encontrando que estas relaciones de pareja son todo menos idílicas y pacíficas y amorosas en muchos de los casos. Por eso preguntaba yo sobre la posibilidad de abordar estas historias en otros libros. Pero sé también, Shari, que hay otro libro ya, o 2 libros más después de que ya nos llega a México, pero que ya tienes otros proyectos también de otras historias. Cuéntanos un poquito, si se puede.
I can tell you about my 4th book. Someone has it over here.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Want to hold that up?
He's a big fan of you.
I don't know what the translation of the title will be, but in English it's called Someone We Know, and it's been out in Europe and North America now for about 6 months, and it's going to be out in Mexico probably next summer. And it's about a neighborhood with lots of couples with teenage children, and they all know each other, and there's a murder in the neighborhood. A woman is murdered, and at the same time there's a teenage boy who's been breaking into the neighbors' houses and hacking into the computers and finding things out about people. So these 2 strands meet, and as the book goes along, the reader and the cops are trying to figure out, and all the neighbors are also trying to figure out who killed this woman, and it's constantly shifting who you think it might be. until the very end. I didn't know who the murderer was until the very end. But everyone's a suspect in this one. Yeah, absolutely.
Son libros que para quien ha tenido la oportunidad de leer, que sean, espero que sean muchos aquí, son libros muy sencillos de leer, son muy ágiles, son de esos libros que agarras un viernes y terminas un domingo cuando ya estás acostadito, disfrutando. Son lecturas muy ágiles y muchas veces no encontramos esas características dentro del mismo género. Es complicado encontrar novelas tan veloces en los sucesos y con la descripción de los personajes, cosa que se agradece infinitamente en los libros de Shari. En particular, yo lo sentí mucho en Un invitado inesperado, la velocidad a la que va la historia. Y mi pregunta es si desde un principio ya tenías claro ese estilo y que por ahí iban a ir las historias sin entrar en tanto detalle, y que a pesar de que te da los detalles adecuados y necesarios, que si ese ya era el estilo que tú ya tenías pensado cuando empezaste a escribir novela policíaca o thriller.
I knew when I wrote my first thriller, The Couple Next Door, I wanted to write a page turner. So I wanted something that moved very quickly and you didn't want to stop reading. In terms of how tight the books are, I think some of that's to do with editing. They make my books very lean. So now I have a very lean style. That's just my style. I tend to write very quick books where things happen very quickly. And you always want to know what's going to happen next.
Yes. Sí, siempre. Shari, sé por ahí, porque nos comentaste hace ratito, que empezaste escribiendo otro género, que no era thriller. Y de repente decides dar el cambio a este género. ¿Por qué? ¿Cómo surge esa curiosidad o esa necesidad de contar este tipo de historias?
Well, I always loved to read thrillers, and I grew up reading all the mysteries, all the thrillers, and when I started writing, though, I started writing literary fiction. I was writing comedies, and I wrote 3 of those, and I had 2 of them published, and I was getting a little tired of that genre, and I'd always wanted to write a thriller, but I thought I wouldn't be able to because I didn't know how to plot, and my literary books were all just meandering, plotless. I had my first book, I remember I called it My Plotless Wonder for like a couple of years. So I thought I wouldn't be able to write a thriller because I didn't know how to plot ahead of time. And then I finally just decided I was going to try writing a thriller in secret. So I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my agent. I didn't tell my husband. It was all a big surprise.
¿Por qué?
Yeah.
Why?
So then, well, because I find it very freeing to write in secret. So when I first started writing, I wrote in secret. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing because I feel, if everyone knows what you're doing, they're like, oh, when's your book coming out, right? This is too much pressure. So I'm sort of a closet writer. And the way I first started writing for the public was I wrote my first book and I went to a famous writer at the library. And I told him I was writing in the closet, and he said, come out of the closet. You have to come out of the closet. So I wrote this thriller because I wasn't confident about a thriller. I wrote it in secret. And then when it was finished, I thought, this isn't so bad. It's not bad. So I sent it to a thriller agent instead of, and by this time I told my husband what I was doing. And I don't think either one of us had any high hopes for it. We just thought, oh, it's something new. But it took off and it did extremely well, and it sort of changed our lives. So it's great. It's given me the luxury to write more thrillers.
Okay. Hay por aquí escritores o personas que quieran escribir este tipo de género, que estén interesados, porque una de las preguntas que me hacen casi siempre es, pregúntale a Shari cómo, un consejo que ella daría para los jóvenes que comienzan a escribir este género, que apenas van a arrancar en esta aventura.
Well, I'm a big advocate of writing in secret until you're confident enough to share your books with someone else. I think it's a very exciting time to be writing in thrillers. I think it's possible to be very successful with commercial fiction. And I think what you need to do is try to discover your own voice. That's what people are looking for. You have to have your own style, your own voice. It's really hard to come up with really unique plots. What keep people coming back to your books, it's the style or the voice that they like, the trademark. Why is your book different from everyone else's book? So I would experiment. I would write what excites you and what you want to write, and hope that it finds a market. I wouldn't try to imitate anyone, because once someone's already done it, no one's interested in buying that again. You have to be creative and you have to be distinctive to be successful, I think.
¿Alguna vez te ha llegado algún mensaje de alguien que te diga, en este libro yo soy un personaje de esta historia, sabiendo que no basas obviamente a los personajes, pues yo supongo que en casos cercanos, pero ¿te ha tocado que alguien se vea tremendamente reflejado en uno de tus libros?
Not in the sense that someone has said, I recognize myself in your character, but in the names. I've had a couple of people approach me by email and say, you used my name in your book for your character, and why did you do that? And I have to say, I didn't know I was doing that. I mean, and they both times they said, but I have a very unusual name. But I work very hard to come up with names that I think no one else has. But now I actually Google, every time I have a character name, I will Google the name to see if someone else already has it and they're famous or even not famous. Because I hate, having people tell me that they're in my book.
Me puedo imaginar. ¿Alguien por ahí le gustaría hacerle alguna pregunta a Shari? Abrimos la plática también para que ustedes, si tienen alguna duda o alguna pregunta, quisieran participar en la plática. Aquí.
¿Cómo podemos identificar a un escritor si ha pasado de... Es una pregunta un poco ilógica, ¿verdad? Pero se puede rastrear a un escritor que haya vivido en otra época. Yo he visto a Juana de Arco, a la reina Juana la Loca en una de sus epístolas, a Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz y a Sor Teresa de Jesús, porque es fácil identificar por su prosa y por su poesía. Al terminar las palabras siempre las terminan en ciertas letras que tienen su origen cada letra, ¿verdad? Como la Ra de los hebreos, egipcios. Entonces, yo he notado eso, de que siempre terminan esos tres personajes de su prosa y su poesía en ciertas letras. Sí es posible eso, basado en la historia de la filosofía.
I'm not sure I can answer that question. Are you asking, are modern writers channeling earlier writers? If that's the case, I think that we all draw on a common literary history. So there are motifs that show up in books now that are from before. Is that what you mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay.
¿Alguien más? Ay, como que sentí que se... Ajá. Mira, he's a big fan of
Hi,
it.
Shari.
Hi.
He is a big fan of
a
you.
big fan.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll sign
I'm
all
one
your
of your
books.
biggest fan. I wanted to ask you if you had an idea of write the secuela, la secuela de este libro. Me gustaría verlo, claro, porque el final es muy abierto, claro. Y es uno de mis libros favoritos, al igual que Un invitado inesperado. Entonces sí me gustaría como ver una parte después de el final que, pues, no creo que todos lo sepamos, ¿verdad? Pero pues yo sí. Entonces sí me gustaría saber si por favor podrías hacerlo, no sé, tal vez.
You know, that's the most common thing I get asked is, are you going to write a sequel to this, that, or the other book? And I always say, I don't plan to yet, and I don't really intend to. And then the next question is, can you just tell me what happens to these people? And then I always say, I don't know until I write it, so I don't really know what happens to them. I'm sorry. and I don't know what happens to the people in A Stranger in a House, and I would have to write the book to find out. So maybe someday I'll write the book, I don't know, but I don't have any plans in the meantime.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Buenas tardes.
Gracias.
Disculpe, ¿en cuál libro ha fluido mejor? ¿O cuál se le ha hecho un poquito más difícil de ir acomodando la historia?
Okay, so the easiest book to write by far was my first one, The Couple Next Door. That was so easy to write, and I swear it's because I wrote it and nobody knew, and I
No
just did
pressure.
it for fun, and it was just an experiment, and nobody was watching me, and it took me 6 months, start to finish, boom, and it's sold all over the world, millions of copies. It's been amazing for me. And then when I wrote my second book, then I had a contract. And I had a deadline, and I had editors all over the world, and I had an agent, and I had a lot of attention on the book, and a lot of what I would call interference in a way, and not a lot of time to write it. So I found that my second book was the hardest book in that sense. They often talk about a difficult second book when you're under contract. And then this book was really hard because the plot was so difficult for me. So I say every book is difficult in its own way. But my fourth one was fairly easy to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Aquí hay una. He's a big fan of you.
I see all the books,
Yeah.
yes.
Bueno, antes que nada, gracias por tus libros. La verdad es que son muy buenos, son muy divertidos, hasta te desestresan. Son muy buenos libros. Yo te preguntaría, además de Agatha Christie, tú como lectora y escritora de thriller, ¿qué otras mujeres te inspiran a escribir? O sea, de autoras. ¿O qué otros autores tú nos recomendarías que te gusten a ti, siendo también una lectora de este género?
Oh, okay. So I think one of the early books that really inspired me was Gillian Flynn's novel, Gone Girl, because that was sort of the first sort of domestic suspense that went really dark and really interior and right into their heads. And they were both sort of psychopaths. I think I can say that. They were both psychopaths. And how they together were so awful. Separately they might not have been so bad, but together they were really awful. So that book was so interesting in so many ways. And the twist at the end, it just left you feeling, ugh. So that book was really formative for me. I read that book before I started writing thrillers. So that one had a real effect. Other women writers that one had a huge effect on how I looked at psychological suspense. Other than that one, I can't think of anyone that really, like current ones that, I read a lot of them, but none of them really affected me in the way that she kind of rewrote what's the word? Rewrote the, I'm English. You think I could do this? The landscape. She changed the landscape for psychological suspense. And you had a second part to your question, was there? No?
Another woman. Writers.
Oh, another writer altogether. So another book that I really found interesting was The Dinner. Do you know The Dinner by Herman Koch? It was, that one also, I loved the way he did it. It was he went very deep, and he was looking at how monsters are created, how people, it's a story about, if you don't know it, it's a story about these two teenage boys set a homeless person on fire. It's horrific. And so the two couples who are their parents get together and they have this dinner to discuss what happened. But as you go through each course, you realize that the parents, there's something terribly wrong with the parents. And so you're asking, is it nature or nurture? that created these horrible boys that did this horrible act. So that always interests me, nature or nurture. So on that one too, another book that really interested me was We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver. Do you know this book? This book is a famous book. It's about a teenage boy who kills all his schoolmates, and how the mother kind of rejected him when he was very young, but he was an awful child. So it's that whole, did he turn out awful because she rejected him, or did she reject him because he was born awful? And it's just, that kind of psychology really interests me in books. So I would say they were quite formative.
¿Alguien más? Aquí.
I have a question. What kind of books did you read? Not just women. What kind of books inspired you to write like you write?
Well, the ones that I mentioned. I read a lot of literature as well. I love Kate Atkinson. So, for instance, she's someone that I don't know if you're familiar with Kate Atkinson. She writes literary books, but they're also very, they're so human, and they often have crime in them. So one book that I read recently that I loved was A God in Ruins. And there's just this one moment where this husband holds a pillow over his wife's face and murders her. And he doesn't know, but his daughter is watching. But it's not that simple. She was dying anyway, and she'd been begging him to kill her, and he wouldn't do it. But the final moment when he finally does it, it's when his daughter's watching. It was such a moment. I mean, it still gives me chills. So I would say Kate Atkinson is brilliant. So I'm inspired by her.
Hi, Shari. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure for us to have, for you to be here in Mexico. And I'm a fan of your 3 books. I'm going to read your 4th at the end of this month. So let's see what happens. I have 2 questions. First of all, are you planning to change your genre in the future? I mean, I love your genre, but are you planning to write a book of a different kind of category?
I'm sorry, I was distracted by the Spanish, so I didn't quite hear it.
My question is, are you planning, I love your thriller books. I think they're amazing. Are you planning to change or write a different kind of genre in the future?
I don't think so. For now, I'm a thriller writer. I'm under contract and I like it. So I'm going to keep writing thrillers. Although I have to say, someday when I'm older, I would like to write more like Kate Atkinson and take 5 years and write something really special. But that's down the road, I think.
Awesome.
But I might try that.
Oh, hopefully. Second question, have you been approached by any directors to make a film of any of your movies?
Yeah. So my first book, The Couple Next Door, is under contract with Paramount TV for a TV series, which sounds great, but they almost never make them. So we're still waiting to see if they make it. But I would love to see that on Netflix. And I have another contract coming up for someone we know for TV. And we'll see what happens with that. But with film and TV, you option them, and you just never know what's going to happen.
Congrats, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you.
¿Alguien más que quiera? Aquí.
Mi pregunta sería, cuando decides escribir un libro, ¿qué llega primero a tu mente? ¿La idea del libro o los personajes, digamos?
It's always the idea of the inciting incident sort of, idea. So for my new one, Someone We Know, which isn't out here yet, it was something I read on the internet about a teenage boy who his parents had cut off his Wi-Fi at home. So he actually broke into the neighbor's house to borrow their Wi-Fi. Okay. That got me. I have a teenage son who loves his computer, and I thought, what won't a teenage boy do to get his Wi-Fi? So I thought, that's interesting. What if I have a character who breaks into someone's house and not just uses their Wi-Fi, but looks on their computer and see what's on there? And that's how that book started. It's just something I read on the internet. And then everything follows from that.
¿Alguien más? Tenemos tiempo de una última, sí.
I get a lot of ideas from true crime stuff I see in the paper.
Hi, Shari. To be honest, I haven't read any of your books. I get here, probably I'm the only one in the room. I get here because my friend invited me. She's a great fan. Actually, she was online with you chatting through Facebook and Instagram, I guess.
Oh, you're the one.
Yeah.
Oh, so nice to meet you. We'll talk after. Yes, I've been waiting to meet you.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. The first one, what's your background? Did you get any education before you started to write?
I think I had almost too much education. So I did a political economy degree, and then I went to law school and became a lawyer. And then I went to Teachers College and became a teacher. So I have 3 degrees, none of which are directly relevant to what I do. I think to be a writer, you need life experience, to be honest.
So you just decided one night that you wanted to start writing, and you started, and...
Well, I think writing was a dream I had since I was a kid, and I just put it off and put it off. So, yeah, I just came to it late, but it's something I always wanted to do. And not to knock education, I think education's great, but I think writing is something you learn by doing, rather than going to school for it.
No kids, so you can write during the whole day.
I'm sorry?
No kids, that's why you have time to write.
I have 2 kids.
Okay.
And but they're a little bit older now. But when I started writing, actually, when I stayed home with my first child, who was an infant, so I started writing 20 years ago.
Okay.
So it takes, the overnight success always takes decades, I think.
And the last question, since I haven't read any of your books, which one do you recommend me to start with?
I would start with The Couple Next Door, because that seems to be the one that people can't shut up about. That's the one that's sold the most. So I would start with that one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos por haber venido. Nada más antes de que termine esta plática, les aviso que va a estar firmando libros en el stand de Penguin Random House, aquí sobre el pasillo principal. Y pues nada, muchas gracias a todos por venir y muchas gracias, Shari.
Thank you. It's such a lovely audience.